Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on?
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. All right, welcome back. It's another A-Side, B-Side podcast. What's going on, Adam?
Not too much. Did you forget our name for a second?
Look, it's been a long week. I don't remember my name at the moment.
No, that's fair. Like when I answer the phone at the restaurant, sometimes I'm like, thank you for calling. And I'm like, there's a split second where I'm like, I don't really know where I'm at right now. But luckily, there's a lot of signs around and things that remind me of what business I'm at. So that's very helpful.
I'm actually wearing a t-shirt a sweatshirt of ours. And so I just looked at it and it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you have to look down when you're wearing a name tag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Adam.
So let's see what happened this week for you. I know you're kind of in a holding pattern.
Yeah, we are in the shutdown part D. So it's very weird. I spend about 20 hours a day in my apartment, and then I only go out for dog walks and once a week grocery shopping, and then 4 hours a day when I get to go do takeout at a restaurant just to keep us alive. So it's very strange. All the days are running together because I'm doing basically the same thing. So time holds very little meaning. Though it does help very much that I know we record on Wednesdays and the podcast comes out on Fridays. So that has helped give me a couple touchstones to this Gregorian calendar thing that doesn't mean anything anymore. So I got that going, which is nice.
There you go. Of course, we're going to do a couple shout outs to Lair, California, Shepherdsville, Kentucky, Raleigh, North Carolina, brand new, and Franklin, Tennessee. Also, have we mentioned Englewood, New Jersey?
I don't think we have, but it is my favorite wood of New Jersey.
Also, Spring Creek, Nevada. Now, look, I know we mentioned Boston last week, but again, my hopes is we'll mention Boston. Chris Evans will hear it. He'll know that I'm a fan. He's a fan of the podcast. We are mutual fans of each other, and then it works out that way.
And I am available to be the ring bearer. I got that down. Like get one of those little tuxes and just just walk very slowly, kind of scared. Like being a ring bearer is tough because I think being a flower girl.
How many times have you been a ring bearer?
I've never been a ring bearer, to be honest, that I remember. Which means I was either really young or super inebriated. My son was a ring bearer one time, and my favorite moment of the entire wedding, it was a Catholic wedding, so we are Protestant, so we don't really know about the high church. And there was this indication from the priest that you're supposed to bow at the altar before you walk up. So my son, who at the time, oh gosh, this is 4 or 5 years ago? I think 5 years ago. So he was at the time about 9. Just wanted to do the right thing. He couldn't remember who to bow to, so he just bowed to everyone. He walked up to the front, bowed at the altar, turned, bowed to the bride, bowed to the priest, went to his uncle who was supposed to take the ring from him, or the best man who was standing next to his uncle, bowed to him. And then the best part is the best man just bowed back like they were samurais in a 1980s movie. It was great. And then they had communion during the wedding. And I was sitting in the front row with my son, and we go up there. And, when you're not Catholic, you just get blessed because it's the communion is for Catholics only.
Right.
And we get back to the seat, and my son whispers to me, "I guess they didn't give me a cracker." He was very upset that he missed out on snack time. Which
he wanted that cracker and juice, man.
I mean, the kid's hungry, so he was like, "Wait a second, everybody else is getting snack time. I didn't get snack time. What's going on?" There was also a cardboard cutout of the Pope in the back of the church, so there was a lot of learning that happened that day.
He got a crash course in Catholicism.
He did, and also he was ready to convert if you could get some snack.
You mean you get crackers and grape juice?
He was like, "Hold on a second here. This Martin Luther guy didn't have any idea what was going on."
He didn't know where the party was at.
That's right. Where the thesis was skip snack time.
Real quick, also want to say hey to Kanagawa, Japan, which is so cool. I've always wanted to go to Japan.
Yeah, it's a very long flight.
I don't care. I just want to get there. Like the song, I don't care how you get there. Just get there if you can. I don't care how you get there. Just get me there.
I'll do my best.
When we go, like if we ever are able to like go on a tour, we have to make sure we go there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have very little understanding of many of the cultures of the like Eastern Asia, the Indian Isles. So that would be really cool to broaden my mind or my understanding, because I feel like everything that I know is just really trite and movie based and stereotype.
So basically what you're saying is you need that long flight to do your history, your homework and research.
Yeah. And the history is not just movies. Right. Like just because I've seen like Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck does not mean I understand Japanese culture.
Oh gosh. At all.
But I can at least admit that, because at one point in my life I probably would have thought, "Oh yeah, I've seen this movie. I know what it's like there."
Also,
you take off your shoes a lot. It's cool. My parents do that.
Eastern Hong Kong and Russia. So what's up over there?
Man,
that's so cool. I know.
That's really outstanding.
Cool. I know. I'm loving it. I love it. Thank you so much. Real quick, some TV shows. I'd like to update you on that. So I didn't do any true crime this week. I took the week off.
Are you okay?
Shocking. I know. Am I sick? Do I have the vid?
Wait a second. Were you kidnapped by aliens or what?
Is it really me?
If so, this is going to become a very strange podcast.
The thing that was in Utah and again in Romania, it's like
the monolith. People.
Yeah, the monolith. It's snatching people, and
I figure it's just like a really long, drawn out promo for like a new Amazon Prime series.
Oh, I'm sure. It's The Arrival. I bet maybe it's The Arrival on Amazon, or is it going to be Netflix? It's one of those, but I think that's going to be a TV show. Maybe that's what this is.
I think the most logical explanation is this is a PR stunt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to be the new iPhone. That's how big
the new iPhone
is.
Or Facebook is really trying to make Portal a thing. So they're like, it came from space. It's like, no one's buying Portal, man. It's not happening, Mark.
Oh, man. Okay, so I did watch The Undoing. They finished that. And HBO, I've said it before, HBO knows how to do a show. I'm not going to give any spoilers. If you haven't seen it, Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, really, really good. Also, The Flight Attendant, they dropped the first 3 episodes of that. And it's really good. And then on Hulu, A Teacher. I think it's the 4th or 5th. No, it might be the 6th episode now.
And are they doing one a week with that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Now Hulu did the same thing. I think they're all starting to do this where they drop the first couple and get you hooked. And then they make you wait a week now. It's like, well, now we've got you hooked. So, suck it up.
Which is funny because that's exactly what TV used to do. And it's like all of a sudden it's new again, you know?
I know. I thought about that. I was like, this is really funny how we get so used to binging. And now they're like, no, you don't get to binge anymore. Now you got to wait. It's like, that's what we used to do.
We didn't like it then.
But that's why we liked binging. Give us the binge.
I actually started a new show that I think you would like, Brooke.
What's that?
It was this brand new show. I want to say it's on NBC, maybe it's Fox, but it's called Big Sky. And
I think I heard about that.
it's like a crime thriller sort of thing happening in Montana, and Ryan Phillippe's in it. He's in it, and
You were about to give a spoiler.
I was. He's good. I'm through one episode, but it's actually on live TV, so I'm recording on my YouTube TV, and I've been impressed so far. I have been in this weird, just like reality TV only binge. So I watched an entire series about glass blowing competitions, which was really cool. And then I'm in the middle of a series called Forged in Fire, which is all about blacksmiths. So evidently I'm just really interested in people creating things that I could never possibly do in my apartment, and living vicariously through them, because Forged in Fire is also what I usually do to any food I try to make in the oven. So it is like tempered steel sometimes. I've set my smoke alarm off at least 5 times in the last 10 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it's always during the middle of the afternoon. So I never do it at night. And I've never heard anybody else's. So I assume we have really thick walls.
Well,
Fingers crossed.
That's good. Catherine Winnick is in that Big Sky. I liked her. I like her because she was in Vikings.
Yeah, that's where she's from. Okay. Because I was like, I recognize this lady. I know you, but I don't know where.
Yeah,
and she's from Vikings.
She goes hardcore on Vikings. I like her.
Yeah. And then there's a state trooper who is the Drew Carey's brother from the Drew Carey Show, or neighbor or cousin. He was a cross-dresser. He's really good. That was an obscure Drew Carey Show reference.
John Carroll Lynch, maybe?
Maybe. He's a big baldy dude.
Yeah, it's John Carroll Lynch.
Yeah.
I know the actor, not the character.
Name before. Yeah, he's one of those guys that like you're like, oh, that guy from that show.
Right.
He's pretty good. I'm enjoying it so far. So
the one episode that you've seen.
Yeah, but that was big. Like, it's been weird. Like, I have not been willing to, because of I blame the isolation. I blame the shutdown and how like I don't get to see people really. Even when I'm like doing takeout, it's like walk out to their car and nobody wants to have a conversation because it's 15 degrees outside and it's COVID and we're all wearing masks. And sometimes people just like point to the trunk and pop the trunk and I just put their food in the trunk and it's very impersonal. So I'm missing like human interaction. So I found that I'm watching more and more shows that I already know.
Well, that's been a big
before.
thing this year. That's like, I've read that. That's what a lot of people are doing because you find comfort in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just total comfort shows while I'm eating comfort food, being comforted by my dog. So really the theme is comfort. Wearing comfy pants.
You should check out Happiness Season. It's on Hulu. It's a nice little holiday flick. It really put me in the mind. It made me want to watch The Family Stone. It's really good. It's got Kristen Stewart and Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek. Also,
and Kristen Stewart, as in
Twilight.
Twilight. Kristen Stewart. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know it.
Mary Steenburgen is in it. Oh, Aubrey Plaza from Parks and Rec.
I like her a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, she good.
Yeah. Also, if we would love it if you would do us this big, huge favor, if you would log on to Apple Podcasts and give us a like, maybe give us a review. You like the show, let us know. We really appreciate it.
If you don't like it, just send us a personal email.
asidebsidepodcasts at Gmail. Just go ahead and send that to us.
Yeah. As opposed to putting it on Apple. Just send that right to us. Well, that'll be better.
Still have time to get in on that merch before the holidays. Get it in before the holidays. asidebsidepodcast.square.site. And
we got Christmas ornaments and
stockings,
puzzles. I mean, puzzling is becoming a big part of my life right now because quarantine. So puzzles are important. We just put together a 1,000-piece Day of the Dead with all these different masks, like candy skulls.
Oh yeah.
Man, that was that tough. That was rough. Some dark moments there.
All right. So this is episode 21. You ready to get into it?
Raise all over me. Bring on the death.
You're so dumb.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Okay, so Adam, last week we talked about a pretty non-typical serial killer in Giggling Granny, Nanny Doss. And I have to tell you, we learned the best expression when talking about her on our Instagram page, aside_bside_podcast. Ella from the UK said that she wouldn't melt butter. And I was like, well, that's an interesting expression. So I looked it up, and the full expression is he or she, they wouldn't melt butter in their mouth. And it's a person who seems demure and sweet and innocent, but they are so devious and so cold-blooded that if they were to have like a pat of butter in their mouth, it wouldn't melt.
Which would be very sad because melted butter is delicious on everything.
But I just think that it's such a cool way to say like cold-blooded, stone cold. The UK, man, they always have the best expressions.
Oh, they have a way with words. I mean, they
Really?
invented the English language.
It's true. It's true.
We just made it way worse.
We're the carbon copy of the carbon copy of the carbon copy.
Yeah, on a printer that's running out of toner.
Right. So last week we talked about, like I said, a very non-typical serial killer, a female at that. So this week we are going to talk about another non-typical serial killer. So Oxford Dictionary defines serial killer as a person who commits a series of murders, often with no apparent motive, typically following a characteristic, a predictable behavior, a path. And we've talked about it before. Things to watch for in young age: bedwetting late in life, killing or torturing of family animals, a head injury. Things like that are things you want to look for in a young person. Those are signs that might say, your kid's a serial killer.
I mean, not guaranteed.
No, but you might want to keep an eye on them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
According to the FBI, someone who commits at least 3 murders over more than a month with an emotional cooling period is a serial killer. Serial killers commonly have a sexual deviant motive. There are 4 types. There's thrill seekers, there's mission oriented, visionary killers, and power control seekers. But we also talked about last week, female serial killers are very different. They don't follow that pattern. We also talked about last week that the majority of serial killers are white males from lower middle class backgrounds, usually between late 20s to 30s. This serial killer does not fit that profile at all. This week, we talk about Lonnie David Franklin. Not only was he not 20-something, he also was not a white male. Lonnie took his first victim at the age of 32, and he's African American. Before we get onto that, we're going to look at Lonnie's background. So he was born on August 30th of 1952 in Los Angeles, South Central area. Not a whole lot is known about him until he hits the age of 22. After serving less than a year in the Army, Lonnie was discharged on July 24th, 1975. Wikipedia says he received a dishonorable discharge, but several other sources, including People Magazine, ABC News 7, and All That's Interesting, say it was a general discharge. General means that you met your requirements of your service. You probably failed to meet some standards, or you may have had some disciplinary action, but overall you were, satisfactory. Whereas dishonorable means that there was a court-martial. Dishonorable discharges are given to soldiers that the military deems the most reprehensible. Maybe they've committed treason or espionage, desertion, sexual assault, murder. Now, we're going to find out why this discrepancy is a little weird. Because the reason for Lonnie's discharge was, in fact, rape. In April 1974, a woman identified only as Ingrid W. was 17 years old at the time, and she was from Stuttgart, Germany. So Ingrid is walking along the street, and she's stopped by Lonnie and two other Army privates that were stationed in Stuttgart at the time. They stopped her under the guise of pretending to ask for directions. I'm sure initially she saw these Army privates, they're around her age. She wasn't too concerned. Once she approached the car, one of the men grabbed her and pulled her inside, placed a knife to her throat, and they drove off. They took her to a field near Ludwigsburg, north of Stuttgart. And then, now, I know we don't always give a content warning because it is a true crime podcast, but I'm going to give you a content warning. After they drove her to the field, each of the young men took turns raping her throughout the course of the night. Poor young Ingrid, she testified that she thought her life was ending that night. During the attack, one of the men took photographs. We don't know if it was Lonnie, but it obviously sparked something in him if it was not him, and we will come back to that later. So 17-year-old quick-thinking Ingrid played to Lonnie's perverted interest in her, and she convinced him, somehow she was able to convince Lonnie that she was actually interested in him and that she wanted to get his phone number. So he gave it to her. Police were able to use that phone number to track him down, and as part of a sting, Ingrid planned to meet up with him at a train station. He was arrested a few days later. Once released from the army, he was handed over to the German judicial system. According to defense attorney Seymour Amster, he said it made more sense for the army to discharge him and for him to be punished by the German court system, which is why he may have just received the general. The army was just like, look, we just want to wash our hands of him. You guys deal with it. So according to People, he served less than 1 year. Police and prosecutors are not sure why he was released early. He was released early. He came back to the States. Now, I know he received a general, and I'm sure, like I said, it was just the army kind of washing their hands of him. But I feel like maybe if they had gone that extra step and given him a dishonorable, maybe it could have prevented some things. Maybe not. I don't know. And it could be because the crime didn't happen on a military installation as well.
Jurisdiction issues, maybe.
Yeah, and that may be why it was just easier for them to just say, we'll just let the German authorities handle it. So in the mid-1980s, the LAPD discovered that there was a non-typical serial killer in their midst. While most serial killers typically target white women, this killer picked victims that most law enforcement didn't care about at that time, Black females. He also picked Black females that were chronic drug users and sex workers. Although we do know that several serial killers have been known to target sex workers. They're typically white females. So the murders that kicked off in the mid-1980s are responsible for creating what is called the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders. This was formed in 1989 in protest of the LAPD's lack of policing in the areas where the murders were occurring. Remember, these were women that the police just didn't deem as valuable victims.
Not worth the time to investigate.
Exactly. So the coalition felt that the lack of policing and the lack of information dissemination was irresponsible and racially motivated. A woman named Margaret Prescott, the founder of the BCFBSM, remember the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders, she said police told her not to be concerned because they were, now I'm using the language of the time, because I know we don't use this term anymore, but they told her that they were only hookers that seemed to be the killer's target. Margaret contrasted the lack of police interest to the attention that the Night Stalker was receiving. So the killer was dubbed the South Side Slayer and was believed to be responsible for 13 stabbing and strangulation deaths of sex workers between 1983 and 1985. The murders, colloquially, were known as the Strawberry Murders because strawberry was a slang term for a woman who exchanges sex for drugs.
Huh.
Did I teach you something new?
I did not know that. I will look at strawberries completely different tomorrow. What have you been up to, fruit?
Well, this experience was not a rare one. We can look at several instances, unfortunately, not just back in the 80s, in which law enforcement didn't or don't take complaints of Black victims and their families seriously, even with proof. And I know it's not everywhere, and I know it's not every department, but we do still see that this is a problem.
Yeah.
In 1962, Malcolm X called Black women, quote, the most unprotected people in America. Here's a random fact to back that up. I guess I shouldn't say random. Here's a fact to back that up. More than 64,000 Black women today are missing and are murdered at 3 times the rate of white women. Black females do not get nearly the media attention as their peers, and justice can almost seem impossible to achieve. And all of this that is still happening today played into the Southside Slayers' actions. In 1986, 15 murders had been linked to the case, and there were conflicting MOs and suspect descriptions, so it caused investigators to doubt their original theory that it was a single killer. Evidence began to suggest maybe there were several killers, possibly 4 or more, that were murdering women in South Los Angeles. So with the passing of some time, the murders that had been attributed to the Southside Slayer were discovered to be other people, other serial killers. There was Lewis Crane, who committed at least 2 of the murders. Serial killers Michael Hughes, Daniel Lee Siebert, Chester Turner, and Ivan Hill each committed at least 1. In addition, there may have been some clients or some pimps that may have been committing murders as well. Mm-hmm. So here's where we really just get juicy. Okay. So in 1988, 30-year-old Unitria Washington was walking to a friend's house when an orange Ford Pinto that was customized with racing stripes, rims, and high-end tires pulled up next to her. She said it reminded me of a Hot Wheels car.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Can you imagine? Hi. So the driver hopped out and struck up a conversation with Anitria, and he started asking her repeatedly if she wanted a ride. He even mocked her when she refused. Now, let's stop right here. If you feel like somebody's a creep, don't apologize. Don't feel bad. They're probably a creep.
Historically.
Yeah. So he mocked her. He said, that's what's wrong with you Black women. People can't be nice to you. That statement made her reconsider. No. First rule of Murder Club. If he feels creepy, he's creepy.
Right.
I'm going to just keep saying it. Just say it over and over again. If he feels creepy, he's creepy. Don't ever feel bad because someone else made you feel creepy. Better safe than sorry. So Anitria, he played right into her. And she begins to feel sorry because the driver is just trying to be nice. So she accepts the offer of the ride. After riding for a bit, she heard the driver say the name Brenda. And Anitria realized that the driver was actually talking to her. And then she said all of a sudden, everything went really eerily quiet. She said she reached for the door handle and he told her, now I'm quoting, he told her, don't touch that door, bitch, or I'll shoot you again. Notice what he said. Again. That's when she realized that she'd been shot and she felt the blood coming from her chest. Anitria asked him why he shot her. And again, he called her by the name Brenda and said that she was always dogging him out. You know, if you don't know what that is, it's older slang. When you say that bad things or you're being mistreated by somebody, they're dogging you out, bad things are happening to you. She said, I don't even know you. Anitria, probably from blood loss, passed out. And when she woke up, the driver was on top of her. While she was in and out of consciousness, she remembers he continued to kiss on her, and then he performed oral sex on her, and he took photos with a Polaroid. That photo would later be found and used against him. Now, remember, in that very first case we talked about, somebody took photos. Again, we don't know for a fact that it was Lonnie, but that obviously excited him enough to where this became part of his MO.
Thing. Yeah.
So the driver raped Anitria, who of course we know is Lonnie. Unfortunately, due to her constant loss of consciousness, she didn't have to endure it consciously. She wasn't in a cognizant state for that, fortunately for her. Finally, Lonnie restarted the car, and as he began to drive off, he pushed her out of the car and he left her. Anitria was eventually able to get herself out of the street. She rolled onto the curb and she managed to get herself up. Miraculously, when she stood up, she was on her friend's street, the one whose house she was walking to. She made it to her friend's porch, where after a bit of time, her friend and her friend's husband pulled into their driveway. Of course, they immediately called paramedics, and paramedics took Anitria to the hospital, where she had to undergo surgery, and she spent 3 weeks in the hospital. After a year, which is how long it took her to fully recover, Anitria was sure that she saw the driver again. She said she was in Inglewood at the time, outside of her very own house, when a stranger walked up to her and asked, "Do you know me?" And she said, "Am I supposed to?" To which
that's creepy.
He walked off. He left. And at first it struck her as odd, and then it dawned on her that her Inglewood address was on her license, which had gone missing at some point during her attack.
Ooh.
She shook off the encounter. One of the most amazing things about this is one of the comments that she made to him during the attack. She told him, I don't know why this just stuck with me, but she said, "I have kids, and if you take my life, I'll haunt you." I don't know why. I just think that's a pretty cool line to tell somebody. Even if you don't know that it's true or not, you're like, "I'm coming back for you, buddy. You better not kill me."
And also, like, pretty hard to like argue with, because what we can say, like, no, you won't.
Right. So, of course, to be a serial killer means Anitria, who survived, was not his only victim. There was a group of murders which were linked by the use of a 25 caliber firearm. The first of these murders was that of Deborah Jackson in August of 1985. She was his first confirmed victim. This was linked forensically to the murder of Henrietta Wright in August of 1986. Lonnie's first victim was actually Sharon Alicia Dismuke, who was killed January 15th, 1984. By 1987, there were 7 victims linked to the same gun, all of whom had been shot at close range in the chest. Remember, that's exactly what happened to Anitria.
Mm-hmm.
Lonnie's nickname became the Grim Sleeper, and this was due to the fact that there was a long period of sleeping or inactivity between murders.
Okay.
But here's the question. This is the question that remains. Was he actually sleeping, or was he just better at hiding his victims during his near 2-decade murder hiatus? The killings appeared to stop in 1988 and begin again in 2002. And here's the thing. If you know anything about serial killers, their cooling periods are never that long.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Right. So chances are he was really good at hiding his victims.
His MO slightly changed or something.
Well, we'll see why I think he would be able to hide his victims so well. So the murders appeared to spark back in 2002. They continued with no leads until 2007, when the death of Genesia Peters was linked through DNA analysis to at least 11 unsolved murders in LA, the first of which occurred in 1985. Later, after Lonnie's arrest, a 2000 murder was attributed to him. The MO was linked to the murder of Georgia Mae Thomas. At trial, Lonnie, who was mostly quiet during his trials, mouthed to Georgia's sister, "I've never seen you before in my life," which is a weird thing to say because were you stalking your victims? Did you know their lives? How would you know who she was? Why would you say that?
Right.
So in 2007, the LAPD formed a secret task force, the 8000 Task Force, comprised of 6 detectives and it was overseen by the Robbery Homicide Unit. After a 4-month investigation, an investigative reporter for the LA Weekly, her name was Christine Pelisek, broke the story of the task force and the link between Genesia's murder and those from the 80s, and the silence of the mayor, who at the time was Antonio Villaraigosa, as well as the police chief, who at the time was William Breton, regarding the existence of the Grim Sleeper. It was also LA Weekly that was the first, in some cases, to inform the families that their loved ones had been confirmed as victims of a serial killer. So this investigative reporter and this magazine not only broke the news of the task force, but they also were the ones to inform the families, yeah, your loved one was taken out by a serial killer.
Oof.
In
They had to read about it in the paper, basically.
Yeah.
Or magazine.
And I don't know if the journalist maybe contacted them first, but either way, it wasn't. They didn't find out the way they should have. Exactly. Yeah. So in 2008, the Los Angeles officials announced that they were offering a $500,000 reward to help catch the killer. On November 1st, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, Season 22, Episode 7. I tried to find this particular episode to watch it, but the show itself doesn't seem to be available on any streaming service anywhere, which is really weird.
Yeah. Or is it like direct, like DVD only?
I guess so. I mean, I could not find it, even on YouTube, which is really weird because everything's on YouTube.
You can find everything on YouTube.
So Police Chief William Bratton addressed the public for the very first time on February 24th, 2009, regarding the Grim Sleeper. He also released a 911 call from the 80s. In the call, a man reports seeing a body being dumped by a man, and he gave a full description and license plate number of the van connected with the now closed Cosmopolitan Church. Back in 2008, then Attorney General Jerry Brown enacted a comprehensive yet extremely controversial DNA policy, a familial DNA policy. Under the policy, familial DNA is only to be used as a last resort when all other investigative processes have been exhausted. So I researched it and I found that since since the policy was enacted in 2008, the Department of Justice has run 156 familial searches. Many of them were repeat inquiries, meaning the same people.
That's not a lot in years.
Right. Yeah, it's not. So, I mean, I guess they are taking that last resort business pretty serious.
And forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but when you're talking about familial DNA, that's using some of the resources that, like, places where you swab your cheek to find out your heritage, basically. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they did a search here with the familial DNA, and the initial search came back with nothing. But officials ran one of those repeat inquiries in 2010, and a partial match was found. It came back to a man who had been added to the database between 2008 and 2009, which was after the initial search. Right. He had been arrested for a felony firearm and drug offenses. That man was Christopher Franklin. Well, due to the age of the crimes and Christopher's age when the crimes were committed, authorities realized, okay, it cannot possibly be Christopher because Christopher was in his 20s at the time he was arrested.
Right. So he would have been like -10 when the first one happened.
Right. So they realized, okay, so it's not him, but it's somebody very close to him who would be very close to him, his father.
Mm-hmm.
So Lonnie lived in an area close to where many of the victims' bodies had been dumped in South LA. So now that they have a suspect, now they have to obtain his DNA. So police followed Lonnie to a birthday party at a restaurant in LA. An officer posed as a busboy and gathered up plate, cup, and pizza crust left behind by Lonnie. Now, this is amazing because I've got another story for you where the police do something really similar. And it is amazing to me that, like, I couldn't be that police officer because the whole time they're eating, I'd be like, are you done? 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 I'm going to take that for you. Okay. Are you done? Like, I wouldn't be able to hold it in because I'd be like, give me this. I need it now so I can test this DNA.
To be fair, I'm sure I have done that as someone trying to clear a table just because I'm trying to get the dishes off the table and pre-bus. And people are like, why is this guy trying to get our dishes so quick? So it probably would have fit right in because all I'm trying to do is get the table clear so we can seat it quick when you guys leave.
If you ever bust the table again, now everybody's going to be like, oh, Adam, he's an undercover cop trying to get my DNA.
Trying to get the DNA. She's got a whole database in the back.
So the police collected the items, and these items gave enough DNA from the saliva that had been left on the victims, and they were able to connect Lonnie to these crimes, and it led to his arrest on July 7th of 2010. The LA County DNA charged him with 10 counts of murder, 1 count attempted murder, and special circumstance allegations of multiple murders, meaning they felt he was responsible for other murders, but
they just couldn't prove it.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of these charges together made Lonnie eligible for the death penalty. So the Grim Sleeper was finally identified as Lonnie David Franklin Jr., a mechanic who had worked between 1981 and 1988 for the city of Los Angeles in the sanitation department. Now you see why I say he probably just got better at hiding because he worked at the sanitation department.
Yeah, I feel like he'd know where to dump stuff that's not people aren't going to go look at that.
Exactly. He would know exactly where to dump bodies. Get this, though. In 1981, he was an attendant at the Los Angeles Police Department garage where he helped work on cars.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everybody said he always had a lovely disposition and he knew how to get a car fixed. Lonnie could have been caught earlier. In 2008, he was convicted of a felony and served 3 years of supervised probation.
And that's how we got the DNA.
No.
No.
Remember, his son is...
No, it was his son's DNA. My bad. I'm sorry. That was also 2008. My bad.
Yeah. So Lonnie served 3 years of supervised probation. In 2004, voters in California passed Prop 69, which is called the DNA Initiative, which required that DNA be collected from all felons and people who've been arrested for certain crimes. As of 2009, all adults arrested for or charged with any felony at all whatsoever in California must provide a sample for inclusion in the database. California currently maintains the 3rd largest database in the world.
Wow.
CODIS is number 1. CODIS stands for Combined DNA Index System and is the FBI's DNA database.
Mm-hmm.
That's the largest in the world. So imagine California is just literally right behind the FBI.
Well, I mean, they got enough people there. If they were just a country by themselves, they'd be a pretty large country.
That's true. I mean, that's valid.
Yeah.
So Lonnie, while on probation, was supposed to have his DNA collected, but it wasn't because probation officers didn't collect the samples from people who were on unsupervised probation, but They also didn't have enough officers to keep up with those on supervised probation, which is what he was on. So they did not collect his sample.
So he almost got through on a technicality
He
of
almost did. Yeah.
understaffing.
Yep.
But he got caught and finished the crust on his pizza. So let that be a lesson.
Always finish the crust on your
Finish
pizza.
the crust on your pizza.
Okay, so he was on supervised probation, and he was convicted in 2003, and they didn't have enough resources, like I said, until 2005. So that's why his DNA wasn't collected. So on December 16th, 2010, the LAPD released almost 200 photos of women that they found in Lonnie's home.
Oh, man.
Police Chief Charlie Beck said these people are not suspects. We don't even know if they are victims, but we do know this. Lonnie Franklin's reign of terror in the city of Los Angeles, which spanned over 2 decades, culminating with almost a dozen murder victims, certainly needs to be investigated further. Wow. Investigators found over 1,000 photos and several hundred hours of video footage in his home. And it all started with that first photo back in Germany.
Wow.
The images, which showed mainly Black females, only one of the sleeper's victims is thought to be a Black male. His name is Thomas Steele. He was not charged for the death of Thomas. Thomas is believed to either be a friend of one of the victims, or he's possibly the male that made that 911 call.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. The ages of the victim.
Tying up loose ends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As they say on the TVs.
On the talkies. The small talkies, not the big screen talkies, the small screen talkies.
Small talkies.
The ages range from teens to middle age, some even older. Oftentimes, the victims in the photos were nude. The photos showed both conscious and unconscious victims dating back 30 years. They were released to the public in order to help identify the victims. Remember, they did that something similar to that in the case of Rodney Alcala, and that was how they were able to identify victims that way as well.
Yeah.
On November 3rd of 2011, Reuters reported that the police were considering Lonnie as a suspect in 6 more slayings. 2 of those victims were killed during the 14-year hiatus. The other 4, 2 bodies were discovered in the 80s, and 2 bodies were reported missing in 2005. The remains of the other 2 have never been found. Detectives were able to link him to 6 additional murders after reviewing hundreds of old cases and with the help of the public after the photos were released. Of course, there's still the speculation about his sleep period. When he cooled off after the botched attempt on Anitria, did he just get really good at hiding the bodies as a sanitation worker, or did he really take time off?
Take a break.
Yeah. His last confirmed murder was January of 2007. On May 5th, 2016, after nearly 3 months of trials and a day and a half of jury deliberations, Lonnie was convicted on 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. At his sentencing hearing 1 week later, on May 12th of 2016, prosecutors presented evidence relating to 4 other deaths that they believed were the victims of the grim sleeper. If these were his victims, it would mean he started his crimes in 1976, immediately upon his return from Germany.
Makes sense.
One victim, Rolenia Morris, was identified from evidence found in Lonnie's garage. Prosecutors didn't charge Lonnie with these additional deaths because they feared it would delay the process of things.
Right. I mean, 10 should be enough to put the guy away for life or death penalty.
Exactly. So
it's just kind of piling on when you're at 14.
But I mean, I get it. I get that they're like, okay, we got you for the 10 plus the attempted. But at the same time, those other families still want that justice, and they still want to be able to say he is responsible and was convicted. But I guess maybe just even connecting him to them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, at that point, I'm hopefully I will never be in the position to try to even
Right.
empathize or sympathize with that.
Right.
But I don't. You would think that maybe having some closure is better than nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But
So on June 6th of 2016, a Los Angeles County jury sentenced Lonnie to death. On August 10th, the Superior Court sentenced Lonnie on each count, naming each individual victims. His convicted victims are Deborah Ronette Jackson, Henrietta Wright, Barbara Bethune Ware, Bernita Rochelle Sparks, Mary Catherine Lowe, Lucretia Denise Jefferson, Alicia Monique Alexander, Anitra Marguerite Washington, his only surviving victim,
the
Princess,
attempted.
yes, Princess Cheyenne Berthomew, Valerie Louise McCovey, and Janicia Levette Peters. His suspected and presumed victims: Sharon Alicia Desmuke, presumed to be his first victim; Thomas Sylvester Steele, the only male victim. Like I said, he was presumed to either be the friend or the 911 caller.
Mm-hmm.
Inez Warren, Georgia Mae Thomas, Alea Marshall, and Rolenia Morris, both of whom have never been found. All of Lonnie's victims, with the exception of the two that have not been found, were found outside and were killed with a .25 caliber gun. 2020, of course, we know, has been a really rough year, but the upside is we no longer have to fear the Grim Sleeper. He was found unresponsive in his cell on March 28th of 2020 and pronounced dead at 7:43 p.m. His cause of death is still pending as of this recording. They're still awaiting autopsy results. I'm sure they're not in a rush.
Yeah, they're way more important things to be working on right now.
Right. There were no signs of trauma found on his body. There have been film and television films about him, television shows concerning his crimes. In 2014, British filmmaker Nick Broomfield created a documentary about Lonnie called The Tales of the Grim Sleeper. Also in 2014, Lifetime premiered The Grim Sleeper, based on the case, starring James Bayless as Lonnie and Ernie Hudson, one of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
He was one of the detectives on the case. In 2017, Christine Pelisek, the investigative reporter from the LA Weekly, she published The Grim Sleeper, an investigative account of the case. The story was also covered during season 1 of Investigation Discovery shows, the Investigation Discovery show, The Face of Evil, in episode 4 titled The Grim Sleeper, that aired May 9th of 2019. Lonnie's death toll makes him one of the worst and most prolific serial killers ever. He's not quite top 10, but abundant in kills nonetheless.
Yeah, and that's only the ones that they connected. I mean,
exactly.
If we go back to how many photos, like, that seems like a lot of people may not have been identified.
Mm-hmm. But Adam, you can sleep peacefully tonight because he was captured and he is dead. So you don't have to have any fear of him coming after you or Lorelai or anything.
Yeah. I mean,
and you aren't a female.
also, something that I've noticed on occasion. It's scary. Like, I live in a relatively urban area. It's not downtown. It's in a rather upper crust part of town. So, but even here, I don't know if you've ever used the Citizen app, but like the Citizen app, which alerts you to 911 calls and things that are happening within a radius around you. It's amazing. I'll be walking the dog at dark and I'm getting alerts about stuff happening. And I don't know. I mean, you're right. I'm a guy. I'm walking with a dog. I'm probably not that vulnerable or that much of a target, but I have friends that won't walk around in the dark, and I totally understand why. Mm-hmm. And then we do these podcasts, and now I'm like, I need a new deadbolt on my door.
But this one should Hope you sleep easy because he's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. It only
Been
took like
gone.
40 years to catch the guy. So
Yeah. But they caught him. That's the important
they
thing.
caught him. Yeah. I
The
wonder how many people have decided not to do like the ancestry DNA thing because they're like, oh, I don't know about my relatives.
I don't want to find out who I'm related to. What if I'm related to, and then you find
Or
out you're
like the
related
people you do know, you're like, that one guy.
right.
Ah, man, I don't want to know if I don't want to be the one. It's got to be a very weird position. Like, obviously, for his son, he probably that's already awkward. But if it had been like a cousin or something, you're like, oh, sorry, I just wanted to figure out where our family was from. Didn't mean to get you arrested.
Yeah. Well, don't do the crime if you don't want them to track your DNA.
It doesn't rhyme as well as it should.
No, it doesn't. But you still get it.
I do. Don't leave the DNA if you don't want to get caught.
Right.
Finish your crust, people. Eat
That's
your
the most
crust.
important lesson here. Finish the crust.
I don't know if it is, but when I was a kid, I never ate the crust. But then as soon as I started paying for the pizza, now I'm like, well, I can just dip this in some sauce. It's like a breadstick.
A little garlic butter. It's all good.
Yeah, this pizza comes with its own breadsticks. I don't even have to buy breadsticks. My kids don't agree with that. We always have to buy breadsticks.
Finish the crust.
Yeah, if you just eat his crust, probably still out there having pizza.
Oh, but there you go. That's the B-side.
This is Kevin Armstrong, your host for Movie Battle. Each episode, we take two films and put a superfan of each against one another to decide which one is best. The only rule we have is that you come correct. If you're interested in being a guest on Movie Battle, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
It's now time for the A-side, where I get to talk about media and hopefully not scare Brooke, because she scares me a lot during the B-side. I got to start doing some scary movies. We did Halloween. That was kind of scary.
That's like one of the very few that just doesn't get me. And I think maybe because I know so much behind the scenes on it, with John Carpenter and stuff like that. So that's like one of the few. Now, if you were to like get into like The Haunting of Hill House and stuff, no, that's all you.
Yeah, no, then I'd have to watch it. So, how do you feel about Gremlins? They scary.
Ooh, I love Gremlins.
Yeah, that's not the response that I get. There's one part in the Gremlins where like a gremlin pops out of the toilet, and I kid you not, every single time I enter a bathroom since the mid-'80s, I'm going to check the toilet to make sure there's not a gremlin in there, because that would be a very uncomfortable situation.
I mean, I check, but not for gremlins, usually for snakes.
Well, yeah. I mean, luckily, that's one of the nice things about living in the frozen tundra of Minnesota. We don't have a lot of snakes.
Yeah, true.
So that's nice. We got that going for us. You can't breathe the air some days, but there's no snakes. So
your car's probably not going to start because the battery's frozen. But hey, no snakes.
Dude, no snakes going to be in your car, so you can just blame that on the cold. Anyway, so as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing a lot of sitting at home during quarantine and watching a lot of things I've watched before. And I find myself in that kind of, like, Brooke, you've been there. Like, you're like, I want to watch something, but I don't really have anything in mind. Mm-hmm. And so you just start kind of scrolling through Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or HBO Go or whatever streaming service you have. And you just find yourself just like scrolling through, like,
the dreaded scroll for an hour and a half.
Yeah. And then you realize all I've done is watch the Netflix menu, which I guess is its own sort of entertainment.
True.
I was doing that the other day, and I stumbled upon a movie that I had kind of forgotten about, which makes no sense because it's a movie I've watched probably 100 times in my life, but it had not been top of mind for a long time. But it popped up in I don't know if it was Amazon Prime. Like, it's all blending together. One of those streaming services. This popped up as a recommendation. And I said, holy cow, I have not watched this since God knows when. And a lot of the movies that I fell in love with when I was in grade school and middle school, and I think I mentioned this before, like our first episode, we talked about the Ewoks, were on VHS, recorded off of the TV on a free sample weekend. I believe what's it when a crime's been too long so you can't get charged with it anymore?
Statute of limitations.
I think the statute of limitations has run out on these, so I feel comfortable sharing this. But in the 80s, when there was like a free weekend and you could check out HBO, sometimes people would record those so they didn't have to buy HBO or go rent a movie from Mr. Movies or the local VHS shop down the road. So one of those was a Indiana Jones knockoff starring Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner called Romancing the Stone.
Oh, yeah.
So good. And I had not probably seen it in 15 years. And I rewatched it the other day. And then, as I am wont to do, I dove into a black hole of research on that movie and also started to think about, basically, it is a Indiana Jones knock. Raiders of the Lost Ark comes out in 1981, and everybody thinks this is a great idea. And the 80s are littered with really bad knockoff versions of Indiana Jones. Continued into the 90s and even into the 2000s. I mean, you could say that The Mummy is almost a knockoff Indiana Jones, or Sahara starring Matthew McConaughey. I mean, some places on the internet do, because it's a treasure hunter sort of guy who deals with, some sort of magical thing that he finds. I mean, on the very 50,000 foot view.
Spoilers. I'm kidding.
Mummy also had its own. Yeah, my bad. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I really apologize that I just ruined the entire thing for you. But it happens. So, Romancing the Stone is easily the best of the early 80s Indiana Jones knockoffs, because I have not seen any of the other early 80s Indiana Jones knockoff shows, which is amazing because I watch TV like 20 hours a day.
Right.
I go to work for 4 hours. I literally sleep with the TV on sometimes, because then it's like a movie I've already heard. So I just sleep with that on because it gives me comfort. I have issues. So it's kind of crazy that I haven't seen any of these early 80s knockoffs of Indiana Jones. So there are a lot of them, and I'm just going to pick out some of the highlights. Probably the one that I will watch is called High Road to China. It comes from 1983, and it actually stars the man who was the first choice to play Indiana Jones, but couldn't get out of his scheduling conflicts with his TV show, Magnum P.I. Tom Selleck was the first choice to be Indiana Jones. Didn't work out. So about 2 years later, he does this High Road to China.
Have you seen the deep fakes of him in Indiana Jones?
Oh, yeah.
They're amazing.
I mean, it totally works. Like, it works.
Yeah.
Like, he would have been a good Indiana Jones. He wouldn't have been Harrison Ford, but he would have been a good Indiana Jones. He plays a pilot in this High Road to China movie that I have never seen, but I've been searching for it. I can only find it on one streaming service. They want me to pay $4, so I'm probably going to end up doing that because it's Tom Selleck. It was a commercial flop, didn't do well, did not give him the boost that Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark would have. You also had King Solomon's Mines with Richard Chamberlain as a character named Alan Quartermain.
Alan Quartermain is on freaking General Hospital. Get an original name.
Well, it was actually General Hospital stole it. It was an old British pop novel character, who
Ah.
people say may have actually, like Indiana Jones may have been based off of him. Alan Quartermain is a character that's also played by Sean Connery in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is a movie so bad that it stopped Sean Connery from ever acting. The movie failed so badly that he decided to retire. So Alan Quartermain, probably not a name that you want to be associated with, because
No.
Richard Chamberlain's movie did very horribly as well.
It's the Madden curse of movies.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like when you do a Western, it's probably not going to go well for you after that. And every actor thinks, oh, I'll do a Western, and then doesn't usually go well. Not speaking of Westerns, Chuck Norris has Indiana Jones version called Firewalker. He at one point he plays a priest in the movie as well, and Louis Gossett Jr. or Lou Gossett is in the movie as well, and they evidently have absolutely no chemistry at all. So it turns it really bad. So Chuck Norris, also not a good Indiana Jones. There was one called Sky Pirates, which, all right, the name is horrible, so we don't even need to know anything else about that one.
Yeah,
or
seriously.
River of Death, which stars straight-to-video king, according to the website, Michael Dudikoff playing adventurer John Hamilton. His voice is too high and his acting too wooden to give Harrison Ford a run for his money. So, Raiders of the Lost Ark started an entire genre, and the only one that is good is Romancing the Stone, starring Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito. The most interesting thing about that movie that I didn't really notice when I was a kid, because I was basically just with Kathleen Turner. So, Peggy Sue Got Married, Romancing the Stone, Jewel of the Nile. She was the voice of Jessica Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Huge Kathleen Turner fan. So I was mostly just watching it for her, but what I didn't notice is that there's one very important thing that separates that knockoff of Indiana Jones from all the other knockoffs, and even from the Indiana Jones movies, probably up until The Last Crusade. And that is the main character, and probably the best character in the entire movie, is the supposed damsel in distress. Kathleen Turner plays Joan Wilder, who is a romance novelist who finds out that her sister has been kidnapped in Colombia, and she has to go to Colombia and help rescue her sister by delivering a map that she was sent by her sister's husband, who is now dead. So it starts out as this bookish, writer that is afraid of everything and doesn't go outside and doesn't travel ever, but she writes these romance novels about, these grand adventures, but has never gone on one herself. And the character arc, Joan Wilder, throughout the entire movie shows the most growth of a character than any of these movies. There's not a lot of character growth happening in Indiana Jones. And I love Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Temple of Doom, the Last Crusade, that movie we don't talk about, the fourth one. They're great movies, but it is not about character development. Joan Wilder goes from being a scared book writer, novelist who hides in her apartment to, by the end, and I think it always was lost on me how much her character grows throughout the movie. But by the end, and spoiler alert, she is the princess that saves herself. She doesn't she calls out for Jack Colton, played by Michael Douglas, to come help her. And by the time he scales the wall to rescue her, she's already defeated the bad guy. She does it herself. And I never realized how important that was when I was a kid watching that movie. It definitely creeped into how much I enjoyed it. And Jewel of the Nile is also a lot of fun. Romancing the Stone has Danny DeVito in a relatively small role at first.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that Danny DeVito, Michael Douglas, and Kathleen Turner have this incredible chemistry overall. So they made the entire second movie basically about them all working together, because it makes no sense that Danny DeVito is suddenly part of the group. So it was to be this, rugged gentleman and this novelist taking, being the heroes, and all of a sudden they just added Danny DeVito in there as a bad guy, and everybody loved him, so they added him as a good guy in the second one. They also, the three of them were so good together that they did a third movie completely unrelated called War of the Roses that basically just banked on how good they all worked together as if it was going to make the movie good. That movie,
not good.
It's hard to watch. It's about a marriage falling apart. Spoiler alert. Also trigger warning. And it's a hard movie to watch, and it's not nearly as good as the other two because it isn't fun or an adventure. But Raiders Romance of the Stone is the only, in my opinion, acceptable early 80s Indiana Jones knockoff, and it does the best job of doing something different by giving the female lead, the damsel in distress, actually getting to turn into the heroine of the whole movie, which is pretty great. And if you've never watched Romancing the Stone, it is absolutely something you should watch during quarantine or during the winter if you want to smile and have a little bit of joy back in your life. It holds up. There's some very, sexist and it's the early 80s, so there are some really cardboard characters of Colombian drug lords and police and that sort of thing. But even then, you've got things that kind of turn on you that you don't expect. The spoiler alert, at one point, the characters of Joan Wilder and Jack Colton are trying to find a car, and they stumble upon these drug dealers in a small town, and it looks like everything's going to go wrong for them, and they're probably going to get turned over or shot because they're not supposed to be there. Turns out that the head drug dealer absolutely loves Joan Wilder's books. So this evil drug dealer is super into romance novels. And it's little turns like that where you're like, okay, where we think this is going, it doesn't quite get there. It takes a little bit more of a turn. It's sad to me that the writer of Romancing the Stone, Diane Thomas, never wrote another movie because she wrote a very interesting and fun script. And then the director, Robert Zemeckis, was actually somebody that Michael Douglas had to fight for to be able to do the movie because everything that he had done previously was a flop. And Robert Zemeckis turned into one of the more famous directors of the 80s and went on to do so many movies. Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Death Becomes Her, even has done. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, my brain is freaking out.
Back to the Future,
Contact, Back to the Future. So if we had never gotten Romancing the Stone, we may not have seen all of these other great Robert Zemeckis films. So thank you, Michael Douglas, which is something I never thought I'd say out loud. But if you're looking for a fun movie for a cold winter night, watch Romancing the Stone. It is A+. Jewel of the Nile is an A. And never, ever, ever watch War of the Roses.
All right.
Yeah. And that's the A side. I love Kathleen Turner.
Now that's the A side. Oh man. All right. Of course, with surges going on everywhere, we just want to remind you again, wear your mask, social distance. It will get better, but we have to do our part. So wear your mask, social distance.
And I mean, there is hope. I read this week that the first vaccine is being approved in England, and that's it's a long way from here, but that is a bit of a potential light at the end of the tunnel, or at least a light that might make the tunnel a little bit more open. So that is what I'm holding on to, and hopefully the good news will keep coming.
Oh, we can all just kind of I think we just need a collective
Yeah, we need some good news. and we got 1 month left of 2020, so maybe we can have a really good month.
Shoo. All right. Again, please, 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 we would love it if you would just do us the favor and head on over to Apple, give us a like, give us a review. You can always check out episodes and merch and our backstories and why we got together to do this podcast on our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. Follow us, social media. We've got Facebook. We have a Twitter now. We also have an Instagram. We always post photos on our Instagram. Every episode is posted on our website. And we have a YouTube as well. So lots of ways to stay connected. We love hearing from you. I've said it before, it may take us a day just because of the way some of the algorithms are set up. You know, we might not see it right away, but we will always get back to you. Love interacting. I think it's awesome. Man, I can't tell you how much it makes me smile when I get like a message or something, or see a like or something. It's like, they like us. They really like us.
I had someone in my timeline on Instagram who shared their Spotify, highlights of the year, and their number one podcast was us. And I was super stoked by that. It was pretty cool.
So thank you so much for going on this journey with us. We absolutely love it. We love you. And there we go. That's another episode of A Side, B Side. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.